Hey, welcome back to my channel. I thought that I would do a sketchbook tour of my low pressure sketchbook, and this is a sketchbook tour that I was not expecting to do. I very much started this sketchbook with the idea being that most of these things I wouldn't necessarily show, and removing that pressure from myself and just having it as like a low pressure place to have. When I first started it, I did kind of show the contents of it because it was part of the portrait challenge that we were doing, and I'll link that video for you. But then moving from that, I was like, okay, if I show it, I show it. If I don't want to, that's fine. But really, I'm quite happy with this sketchbook. I'm quite happy with like how different it is to my other sketchbooks, and also like the journey through it. And it's something that I feel would have been helpful for me to see in the past, and so I thought that it might be helpful for you to see the sketchbook as well. I make weekly art tutorials, paint-alongs and vlogs, and I also have a Ko-fi where I create monthly art challenges, which I'll link for you as well. I also got this art creation sketchbook, and you've probably seen it quite a lot. I've used them in the past for like note-taking, not really as sketchbooks, but I really wanted to just mess around with them and just have somewhere that I can be carefree. They're relatively inexpensive. I really liked the like lavender-esque color. It is 80 sheets and 140 GSM, but it feels a bit lighter. Can handle some wet media, but I think it's definitely best for dry media, although I end up using both. It's got cream paper, and I've done like a full, more in-depth review of it in a previous video, which I'll link for you as well. You know, as always, I've left the first few pages blank, and that's something that, you know, I'll work on. A few sketchbooks have title pages, most of them do not, but I essentially started this in February, and as I've mentioned, I started it with the portrait challenge, and I will link it for you down below if you haven't seen it. Although I make these challenges every month, the way that I set them up and the way that I do them is so that you can take part in them at any point. So, you know, I've provided references as well as like cute little tasks that you can do in order to complete the challenge, and it's actually one that I really enjoyed and that I would probably do again. So I'll link the challenge down below for you if you haven't seen it. But as well as doing the challenge, I was doing the course on Domestika by Doodle Traffic, and she has this really unique style of using like coloring pencils and kind of almost creating rainbow portraits is the way that I can best describe them. So having done that course, I was then trying to translate what I had learnt from it into this Ko-fi art challenge. So I was basically using coloring pencils, the Artex coloring pencils, to do these two portraits. And then here I used gouache. I kind of like focused on doing 3/4 views, and I think I did this one first and I didn't quite like it. This is like her looking over her shoulder. Now retrospectively, I actually don't think it's as bad as I thought it was at the time, but then that's why I also did another 3/4 view here. And what I also did here was like, you know, part of the contour drawing, and I left like little notes for myself to just kind of, I guess, just to remember how I felt at the time and what I thought went well, what I thought could be improved on, just because a lot of the time I tend to forget. For example, what I've written here is I really love the results of this painting. I still do. And I love gouache for allowing me to layer and fix and fix the wonky left eye. It's all about trusting the process, and that's literally because this eye right here I had, for reasons unknown, done like all the way down here, and then in the process covered it all and then kind of did it again. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was before. And then contour drawing. I feel like it's a low pressure sketchbook, true. But I feel like for me, this is when I was like, okay, this is definitely low pressure, because I'd created portraits which I was not that comfortable with, and then I'd used a number of like coloring pencils which I wasn't comfortable with. I'd used gouache, I'd done contour drawing and created something that I didn't really like. But then to actually add florals, like something, a completely different subject matter with the portraits, to me was like, right, I can't make this sketchbook any worse. I can now officially use it as a low pressure sketchbook, and I don't know if this will make sense to anyone apart from me, but as I said, a lot of the times I like having some sort of theme in my sketchbook, like even if it's not the same subject, like, you know, then it's my holiday sketchbook, so I do everything from holidays in there, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. And I feel like it had gotten to the point where it felt a little bit constrictive, which is why, and I was getting like decision fatigue trying to figure out which sketchbook I should use and when, which is why I just wanted a sketchbook that I can do any and everything inside. And that's why I picked this affordable sketchbook, because I think I got it for £7. It had a nice cover and I thought, look, I can do everything I want inside it. So I created this gouache floral using the new colors that I had got from Winsor & Newton, the new gouache colors that I had got. And it's interesting, I always feel like I prefer my watercolor florals to my gouache florals, and I think that's in part because I feel like gouache florals for me require more effort and more layers, so it's more of it's slightly, I find them more challenging. That being said, I liked this. I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, we go from portraits to florals, like everything has changed. And then not only that, I also did swatches in the sketchbook, which again, wild for me. So this is just highlighting the different Winsor & Newton gouache colors that I have. And then I kind of created this, and this is a whole separate video that I feel like I've said it a million times, but I can link for you down below. But the video is called All My Gouache, and basically I created this chart where I highlighted series 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and this is like corresponds to the price. And then on this side I had the light fastness rating, so excellent, good, rated permanent but not fully tested, rated moderately durable, and rated fugitive. And it was just a way for me to kind of see, ideally I would want everything in this category where it's cheapest and also excellent light fastness, like the best light fastness. So in theory, if I were to stick to that criteria, these are the colors that I would have. Looking at that, I could see that I was really missing like a red, and what I wanted was like a nice cool red that was excellent light fastness, and the only one that I could really find that fulfilled that criteria was the permanent rose, even though it's more expensive. Having it like this in this setup really did make me think, like, for example, do I really want, you know, opera pink, magenta and quin magenta? And perhaps maybe I should get quin magenta, which is rated as permanent even if it is series 3, rather than getting a normal magenta which is series 2 but fugitive. So not that I have anything wrong or against fugitive colors, but it just helped me kind of look to see if there were any clear gaps in my palette, anything that I should add, anything that I should remove. And as a result, I also kind of did this comparison. So this is called the portrait challenge or portrait bingo, and these are like the little prompts that I did, and I just wanted to make sure that I had fulfilled all of them and that I had a place to kind of go back to and double check. And then I colored them in when I did it, and I also made a note of like what portrait number fulfilled those things. So it was a lot of fun. These, for example, this one was drawn upside down, this one was painted upside down, so I actually drew and painted them like this while looking at the reference photo upside down as well. I feel like the less said about this the better, but this was supposed to be a self-portrait. I struggle with self-portraits. This was supposed to also be a self-portrait, and I feel like it's a lot better than this one. And this was actually with me using the alcohol markers, so that was quite a nice process. And then I just painted the back here with some acrylic gouache just so that I could go back and paint on it. Of course I haven't gone back. And the same thing with here, because I did the swatches for this and that kind of went through, so I did another painting here just so that I could use it to paint something, and I just haven't felt the need. This is a 10-minute portrait and it's one of my favorites, sod's law. And then this was based on some beautiful bouquet flowers that my friend gave me from her wedding, and I was just looking at the flowers and drawing them. It's part of like the art vlog that I've created, and I did these drawings looking at the actual flowers, which was interesting and harder than I thought it would be, because some of the shapes weren't what I thought it would be. And sometimes you look at something and there's a difference between drawing or painting what you see and what you think you see or what you want to see. So I would try and make things a little bit more symmetrical or omit this, omit that, and it was just an interesting process. And I also created this piece, but this one I painted in the Etcher Everyday Sketchbook, and I just absolutely love it. Again, inspired by the same bouquet. If you're enjoying this video and you want to see more like it, don't forget to hit the like button, as it makes a massive difference to me and to my channel, and it lets me know that you enjoy content like this. Thank you in advance. Then continuing on the theme of like drawing from life, I started drawing some paint tubes that were in front of me. And from there, I kind of thought, oh, they would make really nice doodle sheets, you know, to complement the leaves that I do when I'm doing swatch cards. So I just kept going and then started imagining some, started drawing some from life, started drawing my brushes as well. It was just a lot of fun. And then here I swatched out my new Neocolor 1s and all the Neocolor 2s that I had. And then this is a Ko-fi video where I was essentially trying out a mixed media process to create landscapes. But it was more focused on like how I was dipping my toe into different medias and which things layer on top of what. Then I got the Faber-Castell Pitt pens, which are the dual marker Pitt pens. They're going to be featured heavily in this sketchbook, and I just swatched them out straight off the bat the day that I got them, and I just think that is so invaluable for me when I get new art supplies. As you can see, all these are kind of like open and out here because I'm trying to be more conscientious about actually using my supplies. I feel like the longer it takes me to use a supply, the more precious I feel about it, and the longer it just takes me to actually use it. So used it straight away, which was a great thing to do. Doing like the quick sketch with the Lamy Safari so I can get the big shapes. And then this was just done with some gouache. Then some more gouache florals. This was done on a flight, I think. I was just, on a flight, just putting random colors down. And I really like the effect in the end. And this was inspired by some flowers that a friend had bought me. So the colors are quite off, but I remember thinking about the flowers when I was painting this. Then this is from my holiday, and I'm still working on editing the art vlog because there's just so much footage. It's an absolute beast. But essentially these pieces were created from my holiday trip. And then this was from Emma Carlisle's Patreon session. So she had a free trial, and in it I joined like a live stream. I think actually it was a Zoom call, and in it was all about painting pigeons. I hate pigeons. They disgust me. No shade. So I was actually not sure if I would go to the session, but I had nothing doing that evening. So I logged in, and there was just something so nice about seeing all these people like creating art together as we were all talking art supplies. So in the end, I did actually do like a few quick drawings. So this one in 5 minutes, this one in 10 minutes, and this one in 5 minutes. And it just, even though I didn't like the subject matter, I had so much fun. And that was one of the things that I think inspired me to try it on my own Ko-fi and see like, you know, whether we would enjoy actually painting together on Zoom. And I had an even more amazing time actually getting to paint with you. But before that, we did this, which was the Dose of Inspiration live stream, and that was lovely. And again, inspired by the Fruits Challenge, which is one of my favorites. Like that whole month felt very inspiring. So created this piece first based on the reference photos, and that one was, I think, untimed, so I think it was around 40 minutes, and it's a live stream that's still available on replay if you're interested in watching it. And then this one was in 10 minutes, and I was really started thinking about complementary colors as I was doing it, not consciously initially, but then the more I painted, the more I could see myself being drawn to complementary colors. So this was with gouache as well as Neocolor 2s, and then the final one for the live stream was this one here. And I've kind of done a more in-depth, I guess, sketchbook tour or flip through of the fruit series, so I'll link that for you if you're interested, because if you've watched that one, then you probably don't want me to just completely repeat myself. And this one was just a really casual painting done while sat on the couch. And here are just some of the pieces that I created in May during our Fruits Challenge. I still really love this one, even though it is not watercolor paper. I do feel like the Royal Talons handled it okay and handled it well. I do feel like the results would have probably been better if it was on watercolor paper, but that wasn't the purpose of this sketchbook. This was literally a place for me to be able to do any and everything I wanted, and just know that if it's trash, I can turn the page and that's okay. Like, that's the purpose of this sketchbook. This was with me experimenting with the artist Pitt pens on their own, and I liked that I could get some like blending effects, but I think all in all I didn't really enjoy using them on their own. So this is them on their own, as is this. This was them on their own initially, and then I really didn't like it, so I started adding some gouache to try and save it. I don't like the spread as a whole, but as I say, it's fine, such is life. And this was done actually following a tutorial by Sophia, but instead of using alcohol markers, I used the artist Pitt pens and kind of still use that idea of like doing big block shapes to create strawberries. I love this piece. I don't know how or why we got here, but I just absolutely love it, and it felt completely different, starting with artist Pitt pens, then gouache, adding some splashes of watercolor and then neo colors as well. Just the whole mixed media nature of it is just one of my favorite paintings from this sketchbook. And then I kind of just continued with it and kept going and started thinking about negative space and kind of leaving white spaces more rather than filling everything in, and then trying to balance that as well, because I feel like sometimes it works and sometimes it makes it hard to see what the actual painting is. But I just really loved the abstract nature of it all. And then I also, not from here but from here, started using like a flat brush. So I'd actually changed the brush that I was using, and I liked the shapes that it was giving me as a result, and how the whole painting was just a little bit more angular, like all of them. I'm using a flat brush to paint pairs, the whole thing was just really nice and enjoyable. And then this, I feel like it was from a live stream, but maybe I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, artist Pitt pens again. Or maybe the reference was one that I shared on a live stream. But again, I really love the colors in this as well. Like I love the warm kind of yellowy, orangey colors that we have here. And then how we also have like the cool pinks and the dark Prussian blue. The Prussian blue is just killing me with its like peeling nature and cracking nature. But what can you do? It's still a color that I love. But yeah, so these are some of the pieces that I created that I absolutely loved and I shared. I really like this. It feels like the pears are falling from the sky. I like the, I don't know, I like the colors that are in there. I liked everything about it. And again, it started off with the artist Pitt pens, and then I went over it with gouache. Same for this. And then this was from the live stream, was it? Yeah, and this was done in 15 minutes. Then this was in 10 minutes. Then this was in 10 minutes again. And then we kind of go on to the swatches. So the live stream is still available for replay, as is the Zoom session. So if you want to see, this was from the Zoom actually, not the live stream. So if you want to see that, I will leave it down below for you so that you can catch up. And then here, this was like the swatches challenge, and I loved this. And again, it's all kind of stemming from me wanting to feel a bit freer in my art, and also freer to use my art supplies. So as I've said, I've created a whole separate video highlighting the process of this, which then inspired another video, and then another video, and then another video. So this is actually this inspired 4 videos. The first one being creating something like this, and like really leaning into the curiosities that you may get, or the questions that you may have as you're doing it. So for example, if I was swatching with one color and then wanted to compare it to another, I wouldn't tell myself like, oh no, I'm doing only yellows now, I can't do that. I would just pull out that color and do it. Or if I was wondering if something would layer on top of something else, I wouldn't just be like, oh, I'll just check later. I'll just do it. Like it was just so fun. And it's just a bonus that at the end, the results also looked beautiful. But from there, it inspired like questions like, you know, same color, but different medias, mixing different colors, just making more notes so that I could see. So for example, mixing out all my purples, and again, just extrapolating the things and the questions that I had from this exercise, and just making it in a way that when I look back on it, I can actually understand what I was doing here and how it resulted in like this basically. Then kind of continued with it, and it's just really fun exercise. That it's one that I probably will go back to time and time again. I have done it a few times in other sketchbooks as well, because one of the beauties of this, especially with like this, is that you'll get different results every time just by the nature of how you're doing it and what you're doing. But as well as that, in different sketchbooks, materials will behave differently. So it's just a good way to test out the materials that you have in a sketchbook. You can do this as like a nice thing to like look back on, and a nice relaxing exercise. And then if you want it to be a little bit more useful, you can create swatches either like this or that are smaller, like, you know, swatches like we had at the beginning, like this, and then you have that to refer back to, but in the meantime you get to like play freely in that. So one of my favorite exercises, and I think that because I was getting more comfortable with playing with my materials and mixing them, it kind of showed in my art. I was playing with color a lot more. I was feeling more confident with using like complementary colors, with using like different types of brush strokes. It was just a lot of fun, and this is usually how the paintings, so a painting like this or this, would have started. You can see I usually start with my super light yellow, which is this one, my Faber-Castell Artist Dual Pit Pens, and this color is light yellow glaze, and this is normally the color that I do the first layer in, and you can kind of see it poking through sometimes here. So all through here, for example, that's this one here, and then after, what I will do is kind of go back with a warmer yellow, like a cadmium yellow 107, and add a few more details, and then kind of pick out some of the different colors that I'm seeing there. So for example, these are strawberries, which I think were, I can't remember if they were red or green, like I can't remember how young they were, but if they were red, for example, I would just do like little dashes of red here, there, everywhere, maybe some dashes of pink, and then go over it with watercolor, and then go over it with gouache, and finally go over it with Neocolor 2s. And it's not by force that I use any and all of those mediums, but I know that I can if I want. These were actually done more recently because I'd left like empty pages in the middle, and this was done while in a coffee shop just like chilling, relaxing. And I did this one first because I was just trying to do different leaves, and I'll show you in the next page why. So just trying to like do shakier leaves, if that makes sense, like less pristine leaves, and some that just have a little bit of a wiggle to them, like these ones. And then I was trying to do that as well as create slightly different florals. I love peonies and I love roses, but I wanted to see, you know, can I do different kinds of florals and can they complement my art? And here you can see, so these are the kind of squiggly leaves that I was trying to do. And I was just thinking about a sketchbook as a safe place to experiment and to push boundaries and to see how things are. So I was just trying to see what kind of different changes I could make to my foliage to change my bouquets a little bit. And I literally just started off with this one, which is like my go-to, and then tried to change it a bit and try to change it a bit more and a bit more. I wasn't looking at references or anything. I was just genuinely trying to think about different foliage that would be in a bouquet and seeing which ones I can then add to a painting. Did this first and then from there created these. So that was like a really nice and fun exercise to do. This was something from another trip. I'm not in love with it. I don't like it, and I think it's incomplete. And essentially I was looking out at something like really beautiful, and I wanted to use different colors to what I was seeing because the lighting was so harsh. So I wanted to represent the shadows with purples and blues, which I did. And then as I was doing it, some people came around, like really nice people, not in a bad way. But then I started feeling self-conscious, which I don't tend to usually. I kind of talk about, you know, people will come to you and they'll be super nice and they'll be super kind, and it's kind of accepting that. And I know that, and that is true. But I feel like if you don't like what you're creating, or if you're in the middle of the of the ugly phase, or the, like, you know, the middle of the to be developed stage, it can be quite off-putting to like have all these people looking at something that you know is not what it's meant to be and going to be. So literally as people started coming, I just closed my sketchbook and kind of like abandoned that, because I was like I don't want everyone seeing the ugly face of this painting. And I never went back. And then with this one, I was just looking at boats on the Thames and sketching them, super quick, loose sketches. And then I went back with the artist Pit Pens again and just put a little bit of color, wrote boats here because why not? I think I was just trying to fill up this space because I had to leave and wouldn't be able to like watch boats anymore. Then this was created again from another live stream with my Ko-fi members. And I started it off on this first, and then I kind of felt that actually it was under timed conditions. But following that, I just felt like, and this is one of the things that I talk about in the review video that I made, I just kind of felt like I wasn't getting the best out of the paper, and I wasn't enjoying the process as much because I was fighting with the paper. So I wanted to try on watercolor paper, and I brought out my Etcher Everyday Sketchbook to just continue the rest of the, and this is very nice for like low pressure work. And this was still like low pressure, but I just wanted nicer paper basically. I think in a nutshell, I just wanted to paint and on nicer paper. And then here are a few sketches from Richmond Park, and I've made a video highlighting my wonderful time there because it really was nice. And I just sketched like a tree that I saw, and I sketched a whole bunch of things from that kind of little trip. This was like a little pond that I saw with rocks, and I was never really appreciative of how interesting rocks are to draw or to paint until Sarah Burns mentioned it, and then I was like, let me actually look at rocks and see if they're interesting. And they were like, I really enjoyed doing this sketch. And then I saw ducks and I sketched them. This I then went over with the Neo Color 2s, and this was so interesting because they move so fast. It felt like I was trying to do figure drawing of a toddler or something, like they were just running around. So what I then did is initially I would try and like just watch them and then do the sketch, but then what I started doing is almost like figure drawing, just drawing the main shape, kind of using that as a way to be able to fill it in later if I wanted, but I just wanted to get the general essence of the ducks or the geese as they were going around. And then I saw this little water fountain as I was leaving, and this big tree again as I was leaving. And then here I was taking part in Katie Moody's live stream. And it's so interesting because both of these references, I think she was doing because I'm part of her Patreon, she was doing the settings month. Neither of these things are things that I would have normally painted myself or picked myself. And this is Trafalgar Square. And then like drawing the inside of a home, again, is not something that I tend to do. But I had so much fun doing it and trying it and testing it out. And this was 30 minutes. This was 40 minutes. And again, it's very interesting. I created it all using watercolor, and then kind of went over it with ink. I almost wonder if it would have been better if I'd done it on watercolor paper. And I think that when I first started, I was happy to do like anything and everything in here. And as a result, I really started enjoying the process of creating and enjoying the art that I was creating. And I had a lot more ideas, and it started making me want to use my nicer materials and all my materials just in general. Like I wanted to create more. So that's a really positive that's come from using this sketchbook. And then this is again from a live stream, but this is from Toby's live stream, Toby's Sketch Loose. I'll link him and Katie and Emma down below in the description. But this was part of a live stream that he was doing with Collins. This was called Draw Toby and Colins Cafe, and it was a night scene, which I really struggle with, but I had such a lovely time in the live stream, and I just really enjoyed this piece, which I was surprised by. I didn't think I would. And then this is from Katie Moody's Patreon session, and I just used it as an opportunity to mix different medias. So I had watercolor as well as Neo Color 2s. I fixed this side using the Winsor & Newton fixative because I didn't want to ruin this page, and thank goodness it has worked, so that's been fine. And then here, this is from a Ko-fi video that I have made where I was comparing the Royal Talens sketchbook with the Moleskine sketchbook and just swatching out my different materials such as my Neo Color 2s, my Neo Color 1s, my watercolors, my gouache, and then also creating in a separate video that's like the part 2 of that video, creating a landscape painting in both of the sketchbooks so that we could kind of compare them and take a closer look. And then I went to another park again that had deer, and I drew this first because there was this like stunning dead tree. It's like the saddest and most mesmerizing thing I've ever seen. So I did a quick sketch of it as I was walking, and then I walked towards it and kind of sat down, and it just so happened that there were just loads of deer in front, and some of them I could see, but because I didn't have my glasses, I couldn't really see the distance. I didn't really notice that they were there until they started moving, and then I realized that they were like 20 deer. But anyway, so sat and sketched the deer. One posed beautifully in front of me, so it felt wrong not to. And then as I left there was a pond, and the deer were just going back and forth across the pond. So I just wanted to kind of represent that as the sun was going down. and there were like, you know, weeping willows and ducks, and it was just really lovely. When I look at this, I'm like, okay, the colors are all over the place and it's not my favorite, but I love the memories it brings back. Like when I look at it, I remember exactly what was happening, and that's one of the things that I love about creating art, and one of the things that I love about my sketchbook. And then here, this was in part inspired by a commission that I am doing, where essentially I'm doing like drawings of peonies, of roses, of different flowers, and I wanted to warm up, and I was on the tube. Yeah, so I basically created these little sketches off the top of my head to warm up for the commission that I was going to be doing, and that I am still doing. But I just really love them. Like I just think, because I was on the train and stuff, there is like quite a jaggedy feel to it, and a rough, imperfect feel to it, but I really like that, especially given how delicate the rest of the flowers are. So yeah, and that's pretty much it for my ugly low pressure sketchbook. And I don't think it's ugly at all. I honestly, it's one of the sketchbooks that I have enjoyed the most. Like I've really had a great time in this sketchbook. It's not completely over, there are a few pages, but usually I tend to like leaving a few of the pages in case I want to test out something, or, you know, do another sketch in it later on. But for the most part, it is pretty much done, and it's just been really nice to work in, not because of the paper itself but more so because of the attitude that I used when I approached it. And I made a whole separate video talking about that in a bit more depth. Have a messy sketchbook where you do a whole bunch of different things, some of which you love, some of which you do not, and it's still completely worthwhile. Because despite the pieces that are in here that I didn't like or enjoy, this is still one of my favorite sketchbooks to have worked in. But if you're still watching, then you are most definitely a real MVP, and I really, really, really appreciate you. Let me know that you are still watching. Let me know that you're still watching by telling me what kind of things you would create in your low pressure sketchbook. Would it be anything and everything? Would it be animals, florals, your surroundings, drawing from life? I'm really curious to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.